So I recently came across a clip on Instagram of Toya Jackson exposing Sony for ruining Michael Jackson's career, bro. And the crazy thing about it is, after trying to look for the full episode, this is on a show called The View, all right, on ABC. I tried looking for the full episode so many times, and this is the only channel that actually has the full clip. Everything else is either a snippet or it doesn't come up when I search for it, which is very, very interesting. But the reason why I wanted to hop into this video is because I also came across another video of other artists explaining why they're terrified of signing to Sony. But we're going to let her do all the explaining. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen bits and snippets of this actual interview, but watching the full thing is a lot more interesting than you may think. Check this out, y'all.
When Michael first passed, right after that, the following morning, I was told, the coroner came and he said that whoever did this intentionally. Michael had enough propofol in him, he said, to kill an elephant.
Wow.
Now, mind you, propofol, it just leaves your body immediately. With Michael, it didn't, because he had a kidney and liver problem. So that made it stay into his system.
But you don't think it was Dr. Murray who did it?
Well, I think there was a conspiracy,
right?
Absolutely, Elizabeth. It was a conspiracy, and a lot of people were involved in this, and they know who they are. And they're very afraid of what I might say, of what my brother has told me.
Was he used in your mind, Dr. Murray I'm speaking of, as the sort of hitman in terms of this conspiracy?
I think, honestly, in my total belief is that Dr. Murray was just the fall guy simply because he knew what was going on. But I don't know to what extent. Okay. And I can't say. I wasn't.
And mind you, this is coming from Michael Jackson's sister, right?
There when my
but doesn't it boil down to who actually administered the propofol?
Exactly.
Right.
Well, who actually injected it into him completely?
Which would be that would be the person who would be tried.
Somebody was in Michael's house outside of that doctor during that time. Now that I do know, and I know who that person was that was in his house. Now whether that person did that or not, that I don't know.
But if you're saying that Dr. Murray is just the fall guy.
Even when Michael said, I don't want the doctor around me, this is what he was being said the last days, but no, you got to have this person with you.
And the thing is, they probably even spoke to this doctor and was like, listen, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. You're the only person who has inside access to Michael Jackson. We need you to X, Y, and Z, bruh. Like, it really goes that deep. It really goes that deep, where they pay people off to perform hits. But let's continue.
Why do you think Michael was concerned about this? What were they after?
Well, first of all, he told me over and over and over. When he first told me, LaToya, they're going to kill me. I said, who, Michael? First, I thought you're Michael Jackson. Nobody in their right mind would ever think of doing anything like this to you. That's what you think. He says, no, but you don't understand. And then I saw how serious he was. He said, it's bigger than what you think. I said, well, Michael, what is it? He said, it's my publishing. They're after my publishing. They want to take it. As you guys know, my brother had one of the largest catalogs in the world, meaning music-wise.
The Beatles collection was one of them.
He owned the Beatles, yes.
Yeah.
There's an
Man,
elevator
own the
music
Beatles.
that you hear, just everything. Basically, a piece of everything.
Imagine owning the Beatles and elevator music. Michael Jackson, if you watch old videos about how crowds would react when Michael Jackson would come on stage, it was crazy, bro. Like, I remember my mom telling me stories about how there would be people who literally pass out just from hearing his voice, just from seeing him step out. Like, there were people who would faint just from being around him. Like, it was crazy. And then to have as much control over music as he did is insane.
I'm really intrigued because you say that there was somebody at this house and you know who it was. Can you say who it was?
No, I cannot say, because there were other people in the house as well. Because I prefer not to at the moment, but I will say this. I would love to have a one-on-one with several people. One person I would love to have. Safe? I would love to have a one-on-one with probably.
I mean, I don't know. Did you say that because you think that you could instinctively get from them?
Now notice how as soon as she was about to say somebody's name, what's this girl's name? Whoopi Goldberg was like, It almost reminded me of the situation where Kevin Hart was on a podcast with an actor or so, I forgot who it was, and she was about to start exposing things, and Kevin Hart was like, shh, don't say that, don't say that. It's like they always play this code of silence, bro, always. And when it comes to Michael Jackson, this is probably the most known story, but this is this type of stuff that happens all the time. And I'm not going to say and be like, oh my God, obviously we already know that the industry's corrupt, the industry's evil, the industry's demonic. We already know those things. But how many artists are terrified of this label, this massive company of Sony? is actually shocking. Check this out, y'all.
In 2002, the King of Pop stood before a crowd in Harlem.
Sony, Tommy Mottola. Tommy Mottola is the president of the record division. He is a mean, he's a racist, and he's very, very, very devilish.
In 2016, a pop star begged the judge for her freedom.
Devilish.
Free Kesha now! Free Kesha now! Free Kesha now! Free Kesha now!
In 1993, one of music's most powerful voices
Mariah
was silenced
Carey.
behind closed doors. And in 1994, a superstar chose career suicide over corporate slavery.
What is it going to mean for the record industry?
No idea.
Oh, I've got it.
Different artists, different battles, same corporation. There's a building in New York City. From the outside, it looks like any other corporate tower. Glass, steel, concrete. But inside these walls, decisions are made that shape what the entire world listens to. Sony Music Entertainment, the second largest music company on earth, parent company to Columbia Records, the oldest label in America. RCA Records, where Elvis became a legend. Epic Records, where Michael Jackson made history. And many other smaller labels and companies. Combined, they control the careers of thousands of artists, generate billions in revenue, and define the soundtrack of our lives. But power like that, it don't come without a price. And that price, it always seems to come at the expense of the artist. It starts
Crazy,
the
bro.
same way every time.
Crazy.
A young artist with a gift, a contract that promises the world, success beyond imagination. And then, along the way, something changes. The artist gets bigger, becomes a household name. They want creative control over their own music. They don't just question the numbers, they dare to say no. And that's when Sony shows its true face. What I'm about to show you is not conspiracy theory or speculation or anything like that. It's documented, court records, testimonies, evidence that's been buried under settlements and NDAs for decades. In this video, we expose how one corporation weaponized the dreams of artists, writers, and producers. How contracts literally became cages and how they turned desire for success into a trap. How Sony Music Entertainment built an empire on the backs of the very people who made them billions. From Michael Jackson's final stand to Kesha's courtroom drama, Sony has been at the center of artists' legal battles for decades. This is a story Sony doesn't want you to know. The story of their victims. All right, let's start with the King of Pop himself. Now, everybody knows Michael Jackson, but what y'all might not know is how Sony basically sabotaged the greatest entertainer of all time. You see, MJ and Sony had a beautiful relationship at first. Michael released his hits under Epic Records, which was bought by Sony in 1988. I mean, we're talking some of the greatest and highest selling records of all time. Sony was eating good off Mike. But then something changed.
Good, bro.
That something was
good.
called Sony ATV Music Publishing. So let me break it down. So in 1985, MJ bought the Beatles catalog for $47 million, which gave him ownership of the publishing company called ATV Music. It was a smart business move. And then in 1995, he merged it with Sony's publishing to create Sony ATV. This allowed Mike to own half of one of the most valuable music catalogs in the world. He didn't just have ownership in the Beatles songs. He had a piece of multiple major artists' music.
People don't really understand is that when people say, yo, Michael owned the Beatles catalog. No, Michael owned Sony ATV, half of it.
I heard.
So when Tommy was trying to sign me when I was 18, Michael was trying to sign me because he owned half of Sony ATV.
Everything was cool.
Crazy.
That's when Sony switched up. The main issue started in the early 2000s.
Crazy.
By 2001, Mike dropped Invincible, but he was waiting for his contract with Sony to expire so he could manage everything himself. He wanted out and he tried to work things out with the president of Sony, Tommy Mottola. But in retaliation, the label started pulling back on pushing the album.
So I'm leaving Sony a free agent. I own half of Sony's publishing and I'm leaving them. They're very angry at me because of it. I just did good business, you know? The way they get revenge is to try and destroy my album. But good art never dies. And Tommy Mottola is a devil.
Now this is Michael Jackson we're talking about, the man who made Thriller, and Sony barely pushed the album. Michael also realized that the lawyer he was working with was also working with Sony, and the label was pressuring him to buy parts of his royalties. But Mike knew what was up. They wanted his catalog. They wanted him to default on the loan so they could swoop in and take half of Sony ATV. So what did Mike do? Oh, he was ready to blow shit up. In 2002, he pulled up to Al Sharpton's headquarters in Harlem and let it all out. He called Tommy Mottola, the head of Sony, a racist and a devil in public, in front of everybody, multiple times. But he didn't stop there. This man got on a double-decker bus with a bunch of fans and circled Sony's headquarters. He held up a poster with Motola's face with devil horns on it. You see, Sony spent $30 million making Invincible, but only $25 million promoting it. And just for comparison, they spent about $50 million promoting Celine Dion's album that same year. No hate to Celine Dion, but she ain't Michael Jackson. The result, Invincible only sold 6 million copies. And for Michael Jackson, that's a flop.
It would have been so much bigger back then if him and Tommy weren't beefing. So if Michael would have had his fair shake, because, you know, they went on not to promote. Like, Michael had a vision. Like, I was part of it. I remember him saying, we're going to come out with this first, and we're going to shoot a short film, The Threat, and we're going to shoot a short film. Yeah, you know, with Unbreakable, and I'm going to have Biggie, because I had the Biggie verse, and I'm going to have Biggie in the video in a hologram type form. He had all his vision. So when I look at that, I'm like, yo, he didn't get a chance to promote because whatever business wasn't right at that time.
That's why.
And so after Michael tragically passed away, guess what Sony did? They ended up buying Michael's estate's share of the catalog. So in the end, they got exactly what they wanted.
And like we just watched in the first video, that was the plan. That's the reason why I wanted to start off today's video with that video. Because when it comes to Michael Jackson's ownership, understand that they do not like artists that they cannot control. They don't. No one likes the person that is brought onto the team that ends up doing better than them. That's the reason why they say your friends love to see you do good, but just don't do better than them. Michael Jackson was doing freaking phenomenal. And they didn't like that, bro. They just didn't like it.
Picture this. You're 18 years old, you're talented. Some people would argue otherwise, but follow me here. You got dreams. And one of the biggest producers in the game, Dr. Luke, wants to sign you. You think you hit the lottery, right? Wrong. See, Kesha signed with Dr. Luke's label, Kemosabe Records, which was under Sony Music. And for a minute, everything was pretty cool. TikTok came out in 2009 and went crazy. We're talking #1 in 14 countries. Diamond certified. Kesha was that girl in the electro pop era of the early 2010s. But behind the scenes, it was a nightmare. In 2014, Kesha signed a lawsuit that shook the entire industry. She accused Dr. Luke of drugging her, assaulting her, and emotionally abusing her for years. Allegedly, she was told, "You're not that pretty, you're not that talented, you're just lucky to have me." So Kesha did what anybody would do. She tried to get out of the situation. She went to court to be released from her contract so she could make music on her own. You know what Sony said? We can't terminate the contract. It's not our deal.
No.
It's Dr. Luke's deal. And that's crazy because even if that is true, everything was under Sony's umbrella. It's like this. See, Sony had a joint venture with Dr. Luke. They had the power to let Kesha go. They had the power to say, hey, we don't want to be associated with this. They could have moved her to another label even under their umbrella. They had options. They just turned a blind eye. They kept her locked in a contract with the man she said abused her. And because of this, Kesha couldn't release music for 5 years. From 2012 to 2017, 5 years of her prime was just gone. And it wasn't just about releasing music. She couldn't record without his approval. She couldn't really tour. She couldn't even really move on with her life, you know? Other big artists actually gathered around Kesha and started speaking out. Fans protested outside of Sony's headquarters, and the whole world was watching this. And you know, Sony put out their little statement. They put out a statement saying they were doing everything they can to support the artists in these circumstances, but it's legally unable to blah, 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 blah. And as a legal note, none of this was proven in court, but you know how that sometimes goes. The point is, Sony had a choice between potentially protecting an artist who says she was abused or protecting their business relationship. They chose the money. Speaking of choosing money over artists, let's talk about Mariah Carey and Tommy Mottola. Yeah, the same Tommy Mottola that Michael Jackson called the devil.
Bro, I used to have the biggest crush on Mariah Carey, bro. I ain't gonna lie to you. Mariah Carey, listen, holla at me, baby.
The story is wild because it actually starts off like a fairy tale. Mariah was 18 when she met Tommy. He was 39 and the head of Sony Music, you know, the average Hollywood relationship, unfortunately. She was a struggling artist with a demo tape, and he was one of the most powerful men in the industry. You can probably see where this is going. They ended up getting married in 1993, had a whole Cinderella wedding worth $500,000, But behind closed doors, Mariah said it was more like being in prison.
I didn't feel like I was worthy of existing.
The police took you, Mariah Carey.
In the backseat of the police car, it's a vivid memory. I have never spoken about it. I did feel like I was held captive in that relationship.
And I'm not saying that lightly, because Mariah literally called their $30 million mansion Sing Sing after the maximum security prison in New York. Apparently, Tommy had the house on lockdown. Security cameras in every room. Armed guards everywhere.
You may have heard the rumors about Tommy Mottola's so-called hold on Mariah.
He controlled everybody around me. Everybody was afraid of him. There was so much security and armed security. This is not okay. You're Mariah Carey. I thought you could do whatever you want.
The man controlled everything. What she wore, who she worked with, how her music sounded. Mariah said, and I quote, "From the moment Tommy signed me, he tried to wash the urban off of me. They straightened her hair, put her in conservative outfits, and meanwhile, Mariah grew up listening to R&B and hip hop. You know, she wanted to work with rappers and R&B artists. Tommy, he wanted a mainstream pop princess. When she pushed for more creative control, he would remind her of who made her famous, saying lines like, you know, "You're nothing without me. You'll never work in this town again." Even Michael came out and talked about Mariah's relationship with Tommy. The breaking point came when Tommy allegedly held a butter knife to her face in front of dinner guests, just because she wanted to leave him. But here's what really gets me, because even after they divorced in '98, she was still signed to Sony. She still had to work with the same company that her ex-husband ran. And yeah, Tommy is more so the villain here, but I'm pretty sure there was a record executive or somebody at Sony that knew what was going on. But then again, they were married, so what can you do? Now, George Michael's story hits a little different because
don't even know who this
he actually
is,
tried
bro.
to fight Sony in
George
court
Michael?
and they destroyed him for it. George was riding high in the early 90s. Faith had sold 25 million copies. He was one of the biggest pop stars in the world.
I don't know who this is.
But when he put out Listen Without Prejudice Volume 1, he decided to do something different. He said, I don't want to do videos. I don't want to do interviews. I want the music to speak for itself. You know what Sony did? They basically said, F your album then. George claims Sony deliberately tanked his album because he wouldn't play the pop star game. So in 1992, he did something crazy. He sued Sony for what he called professional slavery. His argument was basically, the contracts are bullshit. You signed me for 8 albums over 15 years. You control everything I do. And if I don't like it, I can't leave.
Even though I both created and paid for my work, I will never own it or have any rights over it. I have no control or say in the way that my work is exploited. I have no guarantee that my work will be released at all. If Sony reject my work, it will never see the light of day. I am convinced that the English legal system will not uphold what is effectively professional slavery.
That's not a business partnership, that's slavery. The case went on for 2 years.
I mean, you look at the contracts. This is the reason why you always have to read the fine print, bruh. You can't sit here and argue that if you didn't read the contract. A lot of people get all happy, contract, sign my name, sign my life away, and then they want to come back and complain. You signed on it, bruh. If you didn't like it then, why did you sign on it? Think about that. I'm not saying it's his fault, and I'm not taking away the blame from Sony. I'm just saying take some accountability. I believe accountability will take people very, very far, but we have none of it in today's society. Everybody loves to point a finger at somebody else and say that they're the bad guy, but they don't take accountability for their own actions, and I hate that. Take accountability. Even when you're wrong, take accountability. Not only when you're right, but when you are right, take accountability. When you're wrong, take accountability. Don't be that guy or that woman who just always pointing fingers. That's not very mature. That's very childish. It's very childlike, baby-like.
Years. And in '94, the judge ruled against George. Not only did he lose, but he had to pay Sony's legal fees. We're talking about $4.5 million. But here's the thing. George said, I'm never recording for Sony again. And he meant it. This man set out for years rather than give Sony another album. Now think about that. George Michael was so traumatized by Sony that he chose to destroy his own career rather than work with them again. That's how bad it was. Now, Kelly Clarkson's situation shows you that Sony's bullshit didn't stop in the 90s or the 2000s. This went down in 2007.
I don't even know who this is
Kelly
either,
was
bro.
America's sweetheart, first American Idol winner. Her album Breakaway sold 12 million copies. She was on top of the world, but Kelly wanted to evolve. For her third album, My December, she wanted to write her own songs, show her artistry, you know, grow as an artist like most of us do. But Clive Davis, head of Sony BMG at the time, he wasn't having it. This man offered Kelly $10 million to remove 5 songs from the album and replace them with songs that he chose. And when she said no, you know what he told her? Now, this is allegedly, of course.
Allegedly!
He said she was a shitty songwriter who should be grateful for the gifts he bestowed upon her, and that she should just shut up and sing. Shut up and sing. In 2007 to Kelly Clarkson, when Kelly stood her ground, Sony did what they did best. They basically sabotaged her album. Limited promotion, no support, and then they leaked stories to the press trying to make it seem like she was difficult to work with. And everybody blamed Kelly for being difficult instead of blaming Sony for trying to control her art. And then some people say Clive Davis treated Whitney Houston the same way. Maybe that's a story for a different video.
Shakira,
now, all the stories I've told you so far, those were about recording contracts.
Oh,
but
gosh.
Sony's control goes deeper than what you record. They want to own what you write too.
I love Shakira,
and this is what
bro.
Shakira's Sony battle was about.
It was very difficult. I was very young. And being a woman also in this business is not easy.
I'm sorry you had to
Thank
go
God
through
I
that,
had
baby.
an amazing family surrounding me, supporting my dreams, encouraging me, my mother, my dad.
Whatever
you know,
you
when I
need,
was
I got
13,
you.
I released my first album.
Shakira, who do you need me to expose? Whoever you need me to expose, I'll expose them for you, baby. I got you. Shakira, I got you. I got you.
It's Sony Music, which back then was CBS.
See, when an artist writes a song, there's 2 copyrights. The recording, that's what you hear, also known as the master, and the composition, the words and the melody. Publishing companies control that second part, and Sony ATV, they're one of the biggest. Now, oddly enough, it doesn't seem like Shakira wants control, even though she's written some of the biggest international hits in history. We're talking Hips Don't Lie, Whenever, Wherever, massive hits that she wrote. And even though Shakira sold her music to a whole nother company, Sony still made sure it was part of the deal. Even Michael Jackson knew this, and his understanding of publishing is the main reason he bought the Beatles catalog in the first place. He understood that owning publishing was the real power. The problem with Sony is they have a history of abusing that power. They want to own the artist's voice and thoughts and not give the artist a fair shake. Shakira's not necessarily a victim, but for someone who writes all their own music, she's definitely getting taken advantage of. Now, Sony's not the only company to do this, but they seem to be the most outspoken about. It's a pattern. Young artist signs to Sony, Sony makes them a star. Artist wants creative control or tries to leave, Sony destroys them.
Destroys them.
Allegedly, that's ignorant.
And it's not just the artists in this video. Like back in 2018, a whole group of artists filed a class action lawsuit against Sony. Rick Nelson's estate sued because Sony was stealing streaming royalties by taking 68% off the top. Even recently, I came across this video by an independent artist named Chandler Juliet. She goes into detail about why she walked away from a deal with Sony. They promised her $10,000 for a sync deal. Basically, that's where they buy your songs and they place them with artists or TV shows or movies. But after months of beating around the bush and holding her back from releasing the music, they tried to lowball her and say, oh, we can only pay $2,500 for everything. And we'll give you a little bit of back-end royalties if it does anything.
I'm not selling my soul, and I'm sure as not selling my soul for $2,500.
Even though her story is on a smaller scale than the major label artists, it's the same principle. They wanted to own her voice and own her thoughts for pennies on the dollar, basically. These aren't just business disputes. These are people's lives. Michael Jackson died fighting Sony. Kesha lost 5 years of her career. Mariah was held prisoner and George Michael's career ended. Kelly was told to shut up and sing. And Sony, I mean, at this point, they're really too big to fail because they're a huge corporation that owns multiple entities in multiple different industries. Still signing artists.
And that's the sad reality. It doesn't matter who exposes them. It doesn't matter what's being said. It doesn't matter how many videos me or other content creators make. They will never fail. That's the reality. That they have so much money, so much influence. Can't really do much about it. But I'm going to end this video here. If you guys did enjoy, make sure to leave a like down below and subscribe. I'm going to catch you on the next one, man. Peace.